This is a rare Ethiopian Orthodox Bible manuscript, handwritten in Ethiopia's sacred liturgical language.
Everything you believe you know about the resurrection might be missing crucial details. For nearly 2,000 years, people have heard a familiar ending to the story. The tomb is empty, the stone is rolled away, and silence follows as the story fades out. But that version of the ending was never shared everywhere. Far from Rome, deep within the ancient stone monasteries of Ethiopia, monks protected a different record. They preserved an ancient Bible containing 81 books instead of 66, texts that much of the Western world never read, and passages that were never commonly preached. Within those overlooked pages lies a resurrection account that doesn't only describe what happened after Jesus rose from the dead. It speaks about what changed. Not just death, not just heaven, but the nature of God, the purpose of the soul, and humanity's direct connection to truth. These writings were preserved beyond church councils, beyond revisions, and beyond outside control, hidden for centuries. And before we uncover what this translation actually reveals, make sure to like and subscribe, because this is the kind of knowledge some people would rather keep out of the spotlight. Let's start with the 81 books that challenge the familiar story. Many people assume the Bible is fixed and final, but the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has never accepted that idea. While the Western Bible settled on 66 books, Ethiopia preserved 81, 15 more than the Protestant version, and 8 more than the Catholic canon. These extra books aren't random additions. In fact, many of them are among the oldest Christian writings ever used by early believers, long before they quietly disappeared from Western tradition. Texts such as Enoch, Jubilees, and Maccabees were once widely respected. For a long time, Western scholars dismissed them as legends. Then modern science stepped in. Radiocarbon dating of the Garima Gospels, discovered in an Ethiopian monastery, showed they were written between 330 and 650 AD, making them the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts known today. While Europe passed through centuries of upheaval, Ethiopian monks continued preserving what some believe were Christianity's original texts. And the content inside these books is astonishing. The Book of Enoch doesn't simply claim humanity sinned before the flood. It attempts to explain why. It describes a cosmic rebellion in which 200 watcher angels descended to earth, took human wives, and created hybrid beings known as the Nephilim. These giants, the text says, consumed and corrupted the world. The book even names these fallen beings, figures such as Samyaza, Azazel, and Barakiel. According to the story, they introduced forbidden knowledge to humanity: weapon crafting, manipulation, seduction, and astrology. In this narrative, the problem wasn't just disobedience, it was the spread of unauthorized knowledge. Many believe this controversial perspective is exactly why the Roman Church rejected the text. The world described by Enoch is chaotic and difficult to control. Eventually, it was removed from the Western canon, but Ethiopia preserved it. And Enoch is only the beginning. The real surprise comes from a resurrection text known as Mashafakan, often called the Book of the Covenant. In most Western traditions, Jesus appears briefly after the resurrection. But in Ethiopian tradition, he remains with his followers for 40 days, and during that time, he doesn't simply comfort them, he teaches them. Instead of sermons, the text presents instructions. According to this account, Jesus reveals hidden layers of reality, knowledge that bypasses religious hierarchy. He speaks about nature, spiritual forces, frequencies, and a coming end-time struggle that won't be fought with weapons, but with awareness. The message feels mystical, urgent, and deeply empowering. Some Ethiopian monks even hold a bold belief that the 81 books represent the narrow gate, while the 66-book Bible represents a simplified path for the masses. If that idea is true, it would mean the version of the Bible most of the world reads isn't the full picture. It's a reduced one. Now, as scholars begin translating and releasing more of these texts, the secrecy surrounding them is fading. These writings are no longer distant legends. They are being studied and examined in the open. And if the stories about giants and fallen angels sound surprising, wait until you hear what these texts claim Jesus taught during those 40 hidden days. According to the Ethiopian Mashafakan, the time between the resurrection and the ascension is not a brief moment. It is the central event. Here, the risen Christ gathers his disciples not only to reassure them, but to prepare them for a spiritual conflict. In these teachings, he describes something called the builder of shadows. He explains that the material world, focused on wealth, status, and power, can easily become the playground of deceptive forces. At one point, he tells his followers, "Do not build temples of stone, for stone will crumble. Build the temple of the heart, for it is eternal." At first glance, this sounds like simple symbolism, but in the Ethiopian context, it reads almost like a direct instruction. Some interpret it as a warning against institutionalizing faith. The text even suggests that people will one day wear religious robes and use his name to accumulate wealth. It describes a future where Rome will turn the symbol of the cross into a weapon. For many scholars, the striking detail in these passages is what raises questions. The warnings sound eerily similar to events that unfolded centuries later, such as crusades, inquisitions, and powerful religious institutions. In these teachings, Jesus tells his disciples that genuine believers may often feel like outsiders within human systems. But the text also introduces a fascinating idea about the human soul. It describes every person as having two winds moving within them, the wind of life and the wind of error. The wind of error isn't portrayed as simple bad thinking. Instead, it is described almost like a parasite, something that enters through greed, through the eyes when they chase what they shouldn't, and through the mouth when it speaks deception. Over time, this force is said to harden the heart, turning a living person into what the text calls a walking tomb. Think about that phrase, a walking tomb. Someone who breathes, eats, and moves through daily life, yet spiritually feels empty. According to the text, there is a remedy, but it isn't rituals or payments. The cure is gnosis, meaning knowledge. The disciples are taught to observe their thoughts carefully, like a guard watching a gate. They are told that the kingdom of heaven exists within them, hidden in the quiet space between thoughts. Some historians believe teachings like this would have been deeply unsettling to large empires and institutions. A society built on authority prefers obedient followers, not individuals who believe divine truth lives within them. Because if people believe that God is already inside them, they may stop relying on external power structures. The Book of the Covenant also includes strange cosmological descriptions. It speaks of storehouses of snow and gates of the winds. For centuries, critics assumed these were poetic exaggerations. Yet modern meteorology now shows that weather moves through massive global air currents, almost like rivers flowing through the atmosphere. Another passage describes a vast body of water beneath the Earth. Interestingly, recent geological research discovered enormous quantities of water trapped deep within the planet's mantle, inside a mineral called ringwoodite, possibly containing more water than all surface oceans combined. For some readers, discoveries like these raise an intriguing question. How did such ancient texts describe ideas that resemble modern scientific findings? And that question is only the beginning of what these forgotten Ethiopian scriptures claim to reveal. These details add a powerful sense of credibility that's hard to ignore. If the text managed to describe things like the waters beneath the earth and the movements of the winds with surprising accuracy, then it raises an unsettling question. Could it also be correct about the so-called spiritual parasite? The tone of those 40 days is strikingly intense. It doesn't carry the gentle, turn the other cheek feeling often associated with the Sermon on the Mount. Instead, it feels more like a commander giving final instructions before leaving the battlefield. At one point, the text records a chilling warning. Darkness will come, and it will wear my face. That single line might be the most haunting statement in the entire book. It will wear my face. In other words, the greatest deception won't appear as something obviously evil. It will look familiar. It will resemble faith itself. It will resemble salvation. The idea suggests that the danger won't come disguised as a monster. It will appear as something holy, something people already trust. This concept overlaps with theories about the Antichrist, but in a far more subtle and unsettling way. The implication is that deception could already exist within the very institutions people rely on. But the teachings didn't end with warnings. According to the text, Jesus also left his closest followers with a kind of spiritual weapon, a secret practice shared only with the inner circle. It involved controlling the breath and focusing the mind, techniques that sound surprisingly similar to advanced meditation traditions found in the East. This idea connects to a long-standing theory sometimes called the Isa theory. It proposes that during the mysterious lost years of Jesus' life, he may have traveled through places like India or Tibet. Interestingly, some teachings preserved in the Ethiopian tradition carry strong similarities to Eastern spiritual ideas, concepts resembling karma, rebirth, and inner spiritual energy centers, though expressed in ancient religious language. So now the story contains several intriguing pieces: a hidden book, warnings about a false religious system, and instructions for unlocking inner spiritual awareness. But if Jesus eventually left his disciples, another question arises: where did the physical proof of divine power go? According to Ethiopian tradition, the answer might lie inside a small chapel that almost no one on earth is allowed to enter. The mystery of the Ark in Ethiopia. It's impossible to talk about Ethiopia's spiritual history without mentioning the Ark of the Covenant. In popular movies, the Ark is portrayed as a lost artifact somewhere in Egypt or buried deep in the desert. Ethiopians strongly disagree. Many of them believe the Ark never vanished at all. Instead, they say it still exists, locked inside the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in the ancient city of Aksum. For Ethiopians, this isn't a myth or a curiosity. It's central to their national identity. The story begins with the legendary Queen of Sheba. According to tradition, she traveled to Jerusalem and met King Solomon. When she returned to Ethiopia, she carried with her a son, Menelik I. Years later, Menelik traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father. Solomon reportedly offered him the throne, but Menelik declined and returned home. However, the Ethiopian royal chronicle, known as the Kebra Nagast, tells a dramatic twist in the story. Menelik and his companions secretly replaced the Ark in Jerusalem with a replica and carried the real one back to Ethiopia. If that account were true, it would mean the Ark has been in Ethiopia for nearly 3,000 years, and according to the Bible, the ark was never just a decorative chest. It was described as a powerful object capable of unleashing devastating energy, burning armies, striking down enemies, and killing those who touched it improperly. Some modern readers even compare these descriptions to the effects of radiation. What makes the story even stranger is the tradition surrounding the ark's guardian. Only one man at a time is allowed to watch over it, and once chosen, he must remain inside the chapel for the rest of his life. Visitors claim that many guardians develop cataracts, lose their eyesight, grow pale, and often die relatively young. Historical records suggest that the Knights Templar traveled to Ethiopia in the 12th century while searching for sacred relics. Some of their symbols can still be seen carved into the famous stone churches of Lalibela. According to certain theories, the Templars believed the Holy Grail wasn't actually a cup at all, but a bloodline. And the Ark, they thought, might prove it. For centuries, Ethiopia's emperors ruled under the Solomonic dynasty, claiming direct descent from King Solomon and the line of King David. That meant while much of Europe worshipped Jesus as a distant divine figure, Ethiopia's rulers believed they shared the same ancestral lineage. If the Ark truly exists in Aksum, then the spiritual center of biblical history might not point toward Rome, but toward a quiet town in East Africa. And the mysteries don't stop there. The impossible churches of Lalibela south of Aksum lies one of the most astonishing architectural sites on earth. Lalibela. Here, entire churches weren't built upward with bricks or stones. Instead, they were carved straight down into solid rock. In the 12th century, King Lalibela ordered the creation of 11 massive churches, each sculpted directly out of volcanic stone. These aren't simple caves. They are full cathedrals with windows, doorways, columns, and intricate drainage systems, each carved from a single block of rock. It's essentially architecture created by removing stone instead of stacking it. The process required incredible precision. Builders had to imagine the entire structure in 3 dimensions and carefully carve away everything that wasn't part of the church. One mistake, a cracked pillar or miscut wall, could ruin the entire project. And yet tradition says all 11 churches were completed in just 24 years. Modern engineers find that timeline hard to believe. Calculations suggest it would require tens of thousands of workers and more than a century using basic tools. Even stranger, millions of tons of removed rock seem to have disappeared without clear evidence of where it went. Local legend offers a fascinating explanation. Monks say human workers carved during the day, but angels continued the work at night, moving twice as fast and using tools made of light that slice through stone effortlessly. Tools of light. Some people hear that phrase and imagine chisels. Others hear something very different. Perhaps some kind of advanced energy technology. There are even theories suggesting the Ark of the Covenant may have been brought to Lalibela during construction and used as a source of power or to soften the rock. Across various ancient cultures, there are mysterious references to techniques that could soften stone using sound frequencies or chemical methods. If such knowledge existed, it might explain how these structures were created. The most famous of the churches is St. George's Church, carved in the shape of a perfect cross. Instead of rising above the ground, the building sits below it. Visitors stand at ground level and look down into the church. Its precision is astonishing. Even after 8 centuries of heavy rainfall, its drainage system still prevents flooding. Below the churches lies a network of dark tunnels designed to represent the descent into the underworld. Candidates training to become priests must walk through these passages in total darkness, feeling their way through the stone while chanting prayers. It's essentially a sensory deprivation experience carved entirely from rock. This ritual connects directly to the teachings described earlier. The idea that one must pass through darkness before reaching spiritual light. Recently, however, modern 3D laser scans revealed something unexpected beneath the complex: hidden cavities and sealed chambers that haven't been opened for hundreds of years. Priests say these spaces hold sacred treasures, possibly gold, manuscripts, or ancient tools. While the pyramids of Egypt attract global attention, Lalibela may actually be more complex in design. The pyramids required stacking blocks. Lalibela required removing stone with extreme precision. Interestingly, King Lalibela had traveled to Jerusalem before the city fell during the Crusades. His vision was to build a new Jerusalem in Africa, a sacred refuge far from the wars of the Middle East. He even named the river that flows through the area the Jordan River. In a sense, Lalibela wasn't just a city of churches, it was a spiritual fortress, built to preserve faith during chaotic times, and remarkably, it survived. While many European cathedrals were damaged during global wars, Lalibela remained untouched. Yet the stones there carry another curious detail. Carved symbols include the Star of David, the cross, and the swastika, an ancient solar symbol that existed long before it was misused in the 20th century. These markings suggest a blending of traditions and an understanding of sacred geometry linked to the stars. Ethiopia didn't simply preserve religious texts. It may have preserved fragments of ancient knowledge, but the deepest mystery isn't about objects or buildings. It's about bloodlines, the hidden lineage. In most Western narratives, Jesus stands alone. No marriage, no children, no continuing family line. The story simply ends at the cross. But in many Eastern traditions, especially in Ethiopia, that idea seems unusual. In cultures where family lineage is central, it's difficult to imagine such a figure leaving no descendants. The Solomonic dynasty ruled Ethiopia for nearly 3,000 years, from around 900 BC until 1974. The final emperor, Haile Selassie, was considered the 225th ruler in that line and carried the title, Conquering Lion of the Tribe of Judah. That title wasn't symbolic. It represented a claimed descent from the biblical line of King David. Tracing that lineage links Ethiopia directly to the Old Testament and possibly overlaps with the era of the New Testament as well. If Mary herself belonged to the house of David and Ethiopian rulers claimed that same ancestry, then the connection between the regions might not have been distant at all. This belief is one reason the Rastafarian movement regarded Haile Selassie as a messianic figure, referencing the Lion of Judah described in the Book of Revelation. Selassie himself never claimed to be divine, but he understood the significance of his heritage. And now modern science has added an intriguing layer. Genetic studies have identified ancient DNA links between Ethiopian populations and regions of the Levant, including areas of present-day Israel and Syria, dating back roughly 3,000 years. In other words, there really was migration between those regions. This could help explain why Ethiopian Christianity feels different from many other traditions. It preserves elements of ancient Jewish practice, dietary laws, circumcision on the 8th day, and observing the Sabbath on Saturday. Rather than being a complete break from Judaism, the faith appears as a continuation of older traditions, which leads to perhaps the most controversial idea of all. Some alternative historical theories claim that Jesus may not have died on the cross. If he had survived, Ethiopia, ruled by relatives and far from Roman control, might have been one of the safest places he could go. Even today, oral traditions in remote Ethiopian regions speak of a mysterious teacher from the north, a healer and man of peace. They don't call him Jesus, they simply call him the righteous teacher. And that raises a fascinating question. Is it possible that the story preserved in the West is only part of a much larger history? What if historians have been searching in the wrong place this entire time? What if the true legacy of Jesus isn't buried somewhere in Galilee, but quietly preserved in Africa? Ethiopian monks often say something intriguing. The West has the water, but we have the well. And according to some interpretations of their ancient writings, the story doesn't end in the past. It continues into the future. Some of these texts even hint that the Watchers will return, and that the timing of everything happening right now may not be random at all. So, here's the big question. Why are these writings appearing now? For nearly 2,000 years, they remained hidden in remote mountain monasteries. The manuscripts were wrapped in goatskin and protected by monks who would rather die than allow outsiders to take them. Through wars, invasions, insects, and collapsing empires, they stayed locked away from the world. Total secrecy. Then suddenly, something changed. In the last few years, these ancient texts have started spreading everywhere online. Unofficial translations are circulating faster than academics can properly study them. Videos discussing them appear across the internet, reaching millions of viewers. One moment you're scrolling through memes or news clips, and the next you're hearing about the Book of the Covenant. That shift feels almost sudden, and some of the more radical interpretations claim that this timing isn't coincidence. It's part of the message itself. According to certain readings, these texts describe a kind of emergency trigger for humanity, a hidden fail-safe meant to activate at a particular moment in history. Doesn't that description sound strangely similar to the internet or even artificial intelligence? One theory suggests Ethiopian monks weren't simply protecting religious writings. They might have been safeguarding something like a break-glass instruction manual for the modern age. If powerful leaders in the past shaped history to control how people understood it, what other pieces might still be missing? And if hidden chapters of human history really do exist, are we ready to explore them? If this kind of hidden history fascinates you, hit the like button and subscribe, because the search for the stories that were never meant to be told is just getting started.